You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Wednesday. We are back. We're doing it both audio and video. That's right. If you didn't catch yesterday's episode, do know that we have launched video on YouTube finally. And we already have our first guest on Wednesday, as teased relentlessly yesterday. We welcome Anthony Treash from Pro Football Focus. Anthony, thank you so much for joining to break down a little bit of this Michigan-Washington game.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me back on. And I will say, the last time I talked to you, I was very bearish on the Wolverines, but I'm starting to buy into them. I'm liking what I'm seeing with them.
You know what? I won't say I'm surprised, but I'm also because part of me thought this was certainly a possibility based off of just kind of how they've talked about themselves all off season. But really interesting the way this is all kind of unfolded. By the way, I didn't even mention Locked On Wolverines podcast. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, all the introduction stuff. I was too excited to get into it with you, Anthony. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about what you saw in this game. Now, I think my first question to you is actually less about Michigan, and I want to know a little bit more about Washington in the sense that, yes, Washington lost to Montana, which a lot of Michigan fans are discrediting this win for Michigan's sake because Washington did lose to an FCS team. Maybe that's accurate, maybe it's not, but I mean, you've obviously seen Washington. What do you think? What is this Washington team that Michigan just beat?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely definitely the biggest disappointment, I would say, in college football. This was kind of, after, in the preseason, I thought this game was going to go a little bit differently. But then after the first week, after seeing Washington play Montana and the way they look, and then also Michigan playing Western Michigan, I thought this was going to go kind of the way it did end up happening. I thought, Washington's offense, there's a lot of question marks there. Quarterback Dylan Morris, he can't, he's a very limited passer, can't really effectively, consistently throw the ball downfield. He did hit a couple of big plays against Michigan, but at the end of the day, it didn't really matter because he couldn't do it on a consistent basis. And also, too, you look at, that Montana game, and he could not handle any type of pass rush thrown his way. I mean, that Montana team threw a lot of stunts and blitzes his way, and it really rattled him. And then against Michigan, too, they did blitz him probably about a quarter of the time. They still got pressure on him consistently, with or without, sending 5 men his way. So, I think this Washington team, I wouldn't necessarily discredit the win entirely because there is a lot of talented pieces there, especially on defense, for Washington, and they ran the ball all over him. I mean, that's an encouraging sign against a good Washington defense, especially because I would say the biggest question mark with this team is ultimately the passing offense, because Cade McNamara, I would still say we don't really know much about him. He's only thrown 26 passes or so, for Michigan this season. Hasn't had that really win with his arm. But it can be viewed as a kind of like temper the hype there, because this team did lose to an FCS opponent. But I would still say beating this team as significantly as they did, I would say it's a quality level win. And like I was alluding to earlier, it was a win that made me a little bit more encouraged with Michigan moving forward.
Now, obviously, on the defensive side of the ball, because there was a lot that we were trying to figure out what this defense was going to look like, how good it was going to be. I mean, we had some positivity a little bit in the offseason about the corners, Vincent Gray coming off of that, not Vincent Gray, but Jamon Green coming off of that Penn State game last year and having that 92 grade that you gave him, I think it was, and everything. But we were obviously talking a lot about Aiden Hutchinson, and these first 2 games for Aiden Hutchinson, I mean, could an outside linebacker / defensive end, could they play really any better in your eyes than what we've seen from Aidan Hutchinson?
I mean, the dude's been a game wrecker, and he single-handedly tanked Jackson Kirkland, the Washington tackles draft stock. I mean, this is a tackle that we were talking about, maybe a first-round pick. After this game, I mean, Aidan Hutchinson pretty much exposed him. I think he's probably throwing his hat in the ring for the best defensive lineman in college football, and that's even throwing in, including Kayvon Thibodeau when healthy. That's how polished of a player he really is. And we've kind of seen that in the past from him, even before the 2020 season, short season also with his injury, didn't play a whole lot. Very consistent player, but we never really saw that game-wrecking type of performances really come out. Aiden Hutchinson's now been a game wrecker. He's added that, kind of element to his game. His hand placement is consistently almost perfect every single play. And you throw in that with his strength, his ability to kind of have, his second reaction moves, and also to his length. And he's just a true bully against really any offensive lineman he goes up against. And I'm excited to see kind of as the season progresses how he really develops as a player. Because he's already kind of hit that ceiling that we kind of pegged him to be. We just needed to see it. Especially against that Ohio State team. I think that's going to be a big performance for him, but it's really also helped out everybody else along the defensive line as well, because I think that was another question mark too with this Michigan team, and why I was a little bit more concerned. I knew Aidan Hutchinson was a good player. One of the best defensive linemen in college football, but the depth after him, there's really no proven guys there. But he's kind of helped pave the way for the other guys to still get pressure. And then, like I was alluding to too, they're not, blitz heavy to the max, use it at an average rate. But when you have a guy like Josh Ross, who, he's 8 pressures on 13 pass rushes. He can get up to the quarterback as well when he's given the opportunity. So I just think that added element right there, with Aiden Hutchinson kind of becoming that game-wrecking type of player, that's huge for the Michigan defense.
Now, you mentioned Josh Ross. He was a name I wanted to bring up, but I kind of want to know on that defensive side of the ball, who all is really impressing you outside of Aiden. Ross is a guy that I feel like is showing a completely different side of his game, especially compared to what we saw last year. We didn't really see him in 2019. And I think he's looking like from what I'm seeing so far through 2 games, he's looking like a even better version of what he was back in 2018 when he kind of burst onto the scene. What are you seeing from him, and who else is starting to kind of be on your radar as far as this Michigan defense is concerned?
Yeah, I thought he was a big X factor entering the year, Josh Ross. And, like I said, with his blitzing prowess, I've been really impressed with what he's been able to do for Michigan. That's definitely a big asset to have. I think, he's definitely one of the better off-ball linebackers in the Big Ten, and there's a lot of talented ones in that conference. And also along with him, Daxton Hill. I didn't think he played his best game against Washington, but it wasn't absolutely terrible by all means. In that first game against Western Michigan, the dude was lights out. He is really one of the best athletes in all of college football. He's in that kind of Derek Stingley type of tier from an athleticism perspective. And now he's starting to piece it all together. Covering the slot for Michigan. I think, with what we saw in that first game, I'm kind of give away some of those. I'll let a few of those receptions slide against Washington. But, he's just been really encouraging, so far. And I think he's going to be a very impactful player. And I think if him, he really does reach that ceiling, kind of like we were talking about with Aiden Hutchinson. We wanted to see him reach his ceiling, and he's definitely hit it. If Daxton Hill can reach his ceiling, that's definitely going to put this team, even further over the hump. Just because the outside cornerback situation, that was another concern with this team. And I still think it is a little bit of a concern there. You look at what they've done so far this season. They've given up 18 catches in the outside cornerback room as a whole, only 1 play on the ball. That is a concern. The way they play the catch point, they're consistently a kind of a tick slow in every regard of the position, but when they are at the catch point, they're not really playing it the way they should. They're kind of at times, there was one instance against Washington where they're just going for the interception instead of trying to make a, pass breakup. They're trying to go for that big play, and sometimes that can burn them. And I think just with that inconsistency there, that's another, still a big question mark outside of the quarterback position on offense. So I think if you can kind of get that, Daxton Hill reaching that ceiling, covering the slot, as well as that pass rush just still churning, like we've seen through the first 2 weeks. I still think that defense is going to be okay with that inconsistency on the outside. But that would definitely make this Michigan defense a juggernaut if they could just kind of be an above average group that is consistent and they're not giving up big plays and they can actually make plays on the ball.
Really interested to see, especially this next week, Michigan plays NIU, which isn't necessarily a powerhouse team, but Rocky Lombardi torched those cornerbacks last year, and he returns in a different uniform. Obviously, he has familiarity with the 2 guys he's going to be seeing on the outside. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this next week with those guys. Anthony, we're going to talk about the offensive side of the ball here in just a moment. But before we do, I got to tell you, we are back and we're better than ever when it comes to football, because all eyes are now on the gridiron. Teams are back. Football season is in full swing. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all of the pro and college football action this season. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, betonline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website, use your mobile device, sign up today, receive your 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. Don't forget to use the promo code NFL100 or actually the promo code Locked On. I guess either or. We prefer that you use Locked On. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, we continue with Anthony Treash from Pro Football Focus. Anthony, you have no idea how much I hyped you up coming into this. I've spoken to Trevor and Seth, and I love those guys, but I was just like, we got to go back to the OG. Anthony's the first one we're bringing on the show. So excited to have you back. Offensive side of the ball, I think there's certainly people have a lot of questions. I think the questions are more about the game plan coming out of the Washington game. But no, Cade McNamara did not look as sharp as he did in week one when he was your top Power 5 quarterback, guy that was, as far as guys that were obviously out there for more than a handful of snaps. But when you look at the offense, let's start with Cade. He still didn't get a bad grade on your end, despite going 7 of 15 for 44 yards. But just this game in particular, what did you see from him?
Yeah, kind of like I was mentioning earlier, I still think he's a big wild card. I still don't know. There's not a lot there to really kind of, analyze. I still want to see more put on his plate before really making a definitive take on him. And I think there's pros and cons to that, just because, I think looking at Michigan's upcoming schedule, like you said, you got Northern Illinois coming up, and then Rutgers, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Northwestern. Those are the next slew of opponents. And you look at their quarterback situation, they're all not good at all whatsoever. Noah Vedral of Rutgers, Graham Mertz, Wisconsin, Adrian Martinez, Nebraska, Hunter Johnson at Northwestern. All of those quarterbacks have, rarely, kind of performed at a high level, in their collegiate careers. And that kind of leaves margin for error with Cade McNamara. And it's whether it's collegiate or pro, it's still all kind of boils down to, who's really at quarterback. Is there a big stark difference there? And I think with Michigan's opponents coming up, there's really no big difference there. So I think, they do have room to kind of add more to his plate to find out what kind of player he can really be in the coming weeks. I still think, with that receiving unit, I was really bummed to see, of course, Ronnie Bell go down with that season-ending injury, because I really did think that he was going to be kind of a really big star, important player for him, just because in that Michigan receiving room, it's kind of the same story along the defensive line. Ronnie Bell was supposed to be the Aiden Hutchinson of the offense in the receiving unit. And the depth after him was very concerning. Not a lot of proven players, thrusted into, starting jobs, performing at a high level. That's a lot to ask of those guys. And you needed someone like Ronnie Bell who's proven he can actually do it. And so, with him out now, I think there's some concern there. And I think that's going to be kind of, harder on Cade McNamara to really move the ball downfield. After what we saw last week, though, with the running back room, though, I think there's a little bit more, I would say, hope for the Michigan offense overall, just because, in college football, I think a lot of people too, with PFF, they think, they don't think running backs matter. But in college football, it's a little different story. I mean, that actually can be a big difference when you have a talented backfield. And I think, with Michigan, I think they have a talented backfield that, it really widens the talent disparity gap. And you don't see that in the NFL. With Hassan Haskins, like Corum, I mean, I really do think that's going to be one of the better running back duos in college football. And they kind of proved that this past week. So I think that can carry him and kind of, help Cade McNamara in his development there. But I still think it's a big, wild card. I still think there's a wide range of outcomes with him.
No, obviously you mentioned those running backs, but the engine that makes things happen for those running backs is the offensive line. And the offensive line, I think, has been a something I don't want to say a surprise, but because given I talked to Jim Harbaugh over the offseason during fall camp, I kept on asking him questions that had nothing necessarily to do with the offensive line, and he kept on finding a way to talk about the offensive line. So you could tell that there was some confidence in the room, but uh, obviously it's I think it's performed better than anyone anticipated, particularly Andrew Vistardis, who fans were not really big on, being a former walk-on. I think he was very hit or miss last year, but then you see this year, so far in my eyes, he's looked like Michigan's best offensive lineman, but they've all looked quite good. What have you seen from those guys? How have they graded out according to what you've seen from them? And you keep on mentioning, either playing at your ceiling or getting towards it. How close are those is that unit to being able to do kind of what Aiden Hutchinson's doing on that side, the other side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, when you mentioned the offensive line, first thing that came to mind were the two Andrews, Andrew Vistardis and Andrew Stuver. Those two guys been playing great. Vistardis, he's definitely, like you said, been a surprise just because, in his collegiate career, there hasn't been a wealth of experience there to really being in a prominent role. And also when he's been on the field, it really hasn't been all that pretty. But, his run blocking has been fantastic so far. And I think it's important too to kind of highlight, with 2 games into the season, it's important not to go all in on a small sample size, especially with a player that we don't have a whole lot of, data on, like the Stardust there. But, so far it's been exceptional. 82.6 run block grade, the highest on the team. I think the whole line as a whole, definitely been encouraging, not a problem at all whatsoever. And, I think I'm going to be looking forward to in the coming weeks, kind of like I was saying with Cade McNamara, I want to see more put on his plate. And at the same time, that's going to put more on the offensive lineman plate, with pass protection, giving them more true pass set opportunities. And then we can, I think we can really kind of find out what kind of group they really have on their hands. But, like I said, so far, so good across the board.
So we know that the offensive line's good at run blocking. Like you said, we don't know yet about pass blocking. What, again, a limited sample size, not only from 2 games, but just especially in this last game, 7 catches, you're not really going to get a lot from that. But given that Ronnie Bell is out, has anyone, from what you can glean, what little you can glean from 7 catches and only 1 really downfield, does anyone really catch your attention as far as the receiver group? I guess we can use the 2-week sample size, but anyone really drawn your eye a little bit?
No, not really. And I think that's kind of like if there's a bearish case to make with Michigan, it's that. It's the whole, passing offense. If they're going to be in a shootout, can they put points on the board consistently? I mean, of course, you look at the first 2 weeks and you're like, oh, well, they definitely put up, a decent amount of points. But can they do that with their passing offense? And, I think that again, that would be the bearish case there. But I guess the argument to that is if, worst case scenario, this passing offense does not, they try to get it going and never does. Cade McNamara, he falters a little bit. No other wide receiver steps up. They have a schedule where they're going to face a ton of offenses that are in the same boat. Like I was saying earlier with Northern Illinois, Rutgers, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Northwestern, all of those teams have the same. Well, we don't know if Michigan has that problem, but they all have that consistent same issue. They can't throw the ball downfield effectively. And I think that goes in Michigan's favor, especially, like we were talking about with the defense they have. I think that would be more of a problem towards the end of the year when you face teams, of course, like Ohio State and even Maryland too. They're looking like one of the more explosive passing attacks, more underrated ones. And so that kind of all comes back to the big issue. And I think that's what's really going to, separate, from Michigan and, can they really get to maybe even double-digit wins? It's going to have to be, that passing offense is going to have to develop some wide receiver is going to have to step up. We just really haven't seen enough of it right now. And within the small sample, I don't think anybody's really shown enough that they can kind of be a Ronnie Bell type impact player.
Now that was, you kind of almost answered the last question I had for you, because last time that you and I talked, you said that you saw this Michigan team as being a 6-6, 7-5 type team. We know the questions that you have, which I also share, obviously. Just they are out there saying we can pass the ball. We just haven't done it yet because we haven't needed to. But even with all of those questions, if you were to hammer down right now how you see the rest of the season playing out, do you think that it's going to be a much better season than you anticipated based off of what you've been able to see for those 2 games?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't see any way that they lose their next 5 games. I would honestly be quite surprised, even Wisconsin, if they did end up losing that game. And so if I had to set like a regular season over under total, I would probably set it at 9.5 right now. I could see them winning, 9 to 10 games. Maybe slip up at some point. We still don't really know what kind of team Indiana is, despite that, really underwhelming start against Iowa. Penn State defense is great. Still question marks on the opposite side of the ball. And then, like I was saying earlier with Maryland and Ohio State, those are going to be a couple tough games for them. So, I would say 9 to 10 wins, definitely a lot better than I was expecting. I did not think, I was very high on Aiden Hutchinson. I thought from a draft perspective, he's definitely a first round pick. I just didn't think we would see that game wrecking type of player yet this early in his career. It's still relatively early as, going down the road, many years. And he's definitely proved that. And the rest of the pass rush has been right there with him. And I think, even too, the concerns on defense have been a little bit less than I thought there would be. Still, outside corners have to improve, but, they've definitely been a lot better than I thought. So I am definitely, like I said, more bullish on them than I was previously when we last talked. That's for sure.
Now, just for clarity's sake, are you saying you think that Michigan would, as far as these teams look right now, you think Michigan would beat Wisconsin, or you think that, I just want clarity on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think Michigan's going to beat Wisconsin. I would be surprised if they did it at this point in time. Seeing what we know about, Wisconsin, going up against a team, kind of, I would say, in the same boat. I think Michigan and Penn State are kind of equals at this point. And that offense looked really rough. And again, it was week 1 for them. But I can't see them really effectively, consistently moving the ball against that type of pass rush, because Graham Mertz didn't look like he could handle that against the Nittany Lions. So I think right now, I think they have that game. Of course, a lot can change over the next few weeks. We've only had 2 weeks of data. Some stuff could change. But right now, I mean, I would be very surprised if they did not win their next, I would say 5 games.
Interesting. Wisconsin's still the one I have circled because Michigan hasn't won in Madison since 2001. And just obviously having watched the last two games against Wisconsin hasn't looked very good. But I think you're also onto something. Wisconsin hasn't necessarily been impressive on the offensive side. It's the defense that scares me. Nonetheless, Anthony, thank you for joining. Obviously, you can read his stuff at PFF.com, but Pro Football Focus, PFF, whatever you want to call it. You can follow him at PFF at PFF_Anthony, right?
Yeah.
Right,
yep,
cool.
That is the handle.
I'll have a Chiron on the screen so people can see that. So no room for error as far as me just fumbling through words. As always, thank you for joining. Can't wait to have you on again to hopefully break down what is an improving Michigan team.
For sure. Thank you for having me back on. Yeah, I'm excited. And hopefully next time we talk, all those predictions that I said, next 5 games come true.
All right, so that was some really good stuff from Anthony Treash. Very excited what he said about what he expects from Michigan going forward. We will see if that comes to fruition. But before we get to a little bit more of my reaction, let's talk a little something about Built Bar. Y'all know how much I love Built Bar. If you don't know what it is, it's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And it is high protein, low calorie, low carb. I have bought dozens of boxes. I'm going to buy another box today of peanut butter brownie because it's my favorite. I have 1 left and I need to replenish. I often have 2 at a time, as many of you know, and it's still lower calorie, higher protein than if I go out and buy like a Metrics Big 100 or something like that. So it totally works out. Plus, like I said, they're delicious. That's part of the reason why I end up having 2, because I have 1 and I'm like, have to have another. So Built Bar, I'm telling you, it's where it's at. Go to built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED. Built Bar, I think it's locked, or is it locked on? Locked 15. Ha! See, I don't use notes for Built Bar. I do it from the heart. But it's built.com, promo code LOCKED 15. Also want to tell you a little something about Prize Picks. Have you heard about it, college football fans? Because Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I love this. I know you will too. Prize Picks is a leader in college sports daily fantasy. PrizePicks offers more college football props than anyone in the world and offers all of the star players of the Power 5 as well as mid-major players you might not have ever even heard of. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. All of your users, I'm just an automaton. Anyone who deposits and uses the promo code LOCKEDON will receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. I'm certainly doing that this weekend. This is happening. But PrizePicks also allows mixed sports entries. You can take the over on LeBron combined with the under on Mahomes in the same entry. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. PrizePicks is also safe and offers fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out PrizePicks.com. You can get it on the Apple App Store, or you can download the app from Google Play today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. All right, let's continue on. For clarity's sake, this is kind of odd because it's the only time this has ever happened with a podcast. I recorded with Anthony Treash in the morning, and then we're doing the rest here in the mid to late afternoon. The episode won't be out till evening because of some of the video logistics. So I feel very disconnected, but so we're going to share some thoughts real quick on what Anthony said, and then I do want to just give a little something extra, something recruiting, just because. Anyhow, so I'm a little surprised, particularly that he is so confident that Michigan will beat Wisconsin. I still fully anticipate that that's going to be a tough game, right? I think that is going to be a really hard sell, in the sense of Michigan hasn't won in Madison since 2001. The defense is really incredible. Michigan is going to need to throw the ball against Wisconsin because Wisconsin has the best run defense in the country right now. That defense is going to be tough. But like he said, he thinks that Wisconsin offensively is a disaster. And that part's accurate, because you think back to the last couple of years. I mean, yeah, last year Graham Mertz had a pretty good game, but why did Michigan lose that game? Because, as I've said a million times over on this show, Don Brown's play calling was so predictable. If you go back and rewatch that game, and I know you won't, and watch it with the idea that the offense knows what the defense is doing at all times, you'll just watch it and be like, well, duh. Now you have a guy today. We talked to Mike McDonald. He said some different things about how you don't want to be predictable. You self-scout. You want to make sure you break your own tendencies and things of that nature. So that's already a welcome change. But so Graham Mertz has really only looked good in 2 games so far. He's looked good against Illinois and Michigan and hasn't really looked great. Ches Malusi looks like a pretty good back. I remember when Michigan was recruiting him. I probably have his number still in my phone somewhere. But I think he's really good, but Jonathan Taylor, he is not, right? Jonathan Taylor was a big reason in 2019 why things did not work out for Michigan. So, but it is a road game. It's the first road game of the season. When Michigan gets punched in the mouth, which it will, how does it respond? That's going to be the big question. Is Michigan going to be able to do enough offensively to be able to combat Wisconsin? All right, so that's my big thought. Also, if you read the Mike McDonald transcript on Wolverines Wire, you'll see that he I actually asked Mike McDonald a little bit about what Anthony had said about the like how do you walk that fine line between getting the interception and the PBU, and he said he likes what he's seen from his guys so far, that they're doing exactly what they're asked. So perhaps that's exactly what it is. We'll see. Anyway, by the time that this is out, probably you'll be able to go to Wolverines Wire and read not a full transcript, but parts of my conversation with Domani Jackson's dad. And I'm just going to give you my feeling. Now, parent and the child, they're different people. But I got off that phone call and I was like, I really feel like Domani's going to end up at Michigan based off of this. Now, a lot of it was off the record, so I can't tell you, but I'll just say this. Despite some of the things that were said in the media yesterday, like, Domani's locked in. I watched a really great interview. It was Adam Gorney and Woody Womack from Rivals, and they talked about it. And Adam Gorney said, I feel like it's 75-25, USC to Michigan, but if they get rid of Dante Williams, then it would, then 50-50. I think it's the other way around. I think it's 75 Michigan, 25. Again, the kid who I've never spoken to Domani Jackson. I've spoken to his dad. I just get this feeling, just based off of this conversation, that Michigan is in an insanely good spot for his services. We'll see. Long way to go. Got to keep winning. But I think that them getting to go to the stadium and be a part of all of everything that surrounds that, getting to see all of the activity on campus, I think that had a huge sway based off of the fact that it's a different world being in Big Ten or SEC football compared to Pac-12. And as someone who lived in LA, granted I didn't go to any USC games, I went to a UCLA game. It's just completely different. And I think that that'll have a big sway on top of the fact that the family is originally from Youngstown, Ohio. Steve Clinkscale is recruiting them. Youngstown connection. I just feel like Michigan was the dream school for Domani. I think that'll all play a part. And I just have a really good feeling, obviously, the Will Johnson connection as well. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Remember, get your questions in on the mailbag. I have no idea how I'm supposed to do a mailbag and keep it at, I'm probably just going to have to splice together some video because my video camera only records 30 minutes at a time unless I somehow stream it into the computer. Maybe that's how we do it. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for listening/watching. Make sure you subscribe on the YouTube channel now that is a thing. Don't have a special link for it yet because you have to get so many subscribers and have to be up for a month and all of that stuff. So nonetheless, get over there, do the thing. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening and watching. Peace.